again, we have one of our experts, particularly around compliance and expectations for this fall semester, Dean O'Neill, AVP and Dean of Students. And so with us, Dean O'Neill, we have some percolating questions from our students and some from our families as well. Maybe you could lay out a little bit about what this compliance and mask wearing is all about.
Sure, yeah. We have articulated an expectation for all members of our campus community to be wearing a mask or a face covering anytime that you are on campus. But let's break down, what does that really mean, right? So for those of our students who are residents here at the university, in the apartments or the halls, anytime that you are not in your own private living space, we would be asking you to have your mask on. So the minute you're stepping out of your residence hall room or your apartment, we're going to make sure that we have that mask on. Same thing for faculty and staff or other students who are driving to campus. The minute we're leaving our vehicles, we're asked to put that mask on. And yes, we are even wearing it outside. And that really is driven by the fact that we have so many people who would be present on this campus, and we know that this is an airborne virus. And so really the best precaution that we have is by constantly having our entire population have a face covering. And that really means over your nose and over your mouth. And so when we are in a face-to-face component for classes or attending an in-person meeting or a student organization meeting, we would ask that you are wearing that mask the whole time. So anytime we're indoors, outdoors, as long as we're not in our own private office or living quarters, we're going to ask people to have that mask or face covering. Can I also add that the university has provided a lovely mask with a Steamboat brand on and a gaiter. And I prefer the gaiter myself because sometimes I leave my office and I forget that mask, but if I'm wearing the gaiter, it is on me at all times, and so I don't really forget. Tricks of the trade when you've been on campus for a while and being asked to wear a mask. So it does take some getting used to, I will offer that. But it really is driven by a desire to keep our campus as safe as possible and limit the spread.
Yeah, and that would be something, maybe you have words of encouragement or maybe a passage of, I think about what will happen if we don't do that. And so maybe you could express some thoughts or feelings around that as well.
Sure, yeah. I mean, as you know, that it is really driven from what are the best practices we can put in place that help limit the spread. That we knew in returning to campus and having some element of in-person, that meant we were assuming some risk. And so we feel an intense obligation to do what we all can, recognizing we all have a part to play, and that wearing a mask and a face covering, following social distance guidelines and the signage to, this is, you come in this way, you go out that way, right? It's all gotten quite complicated around here, but it's all born from, gosh, these are little things that we could do, and maybe small annoyances, for sure. That there's a reality to that, but it is rooted in things that we can do to keep each other safe. That if we're going to come back to campus, what is the most that we can do to really make sure we're taking care of one another? That feels important to say, right? Because any choice to pursue a non-compliance issue is really about inviting somebody into conversation and awareness about their role and responsibility as a member of our community, right? We believe any code of conduct process is something that is meant to be educational, and so too with this, right? And so it would of course depend on what kind of violation for the policy, but our first line of interaction is going to be, let us help have a conversation about why this is important. What is it that you might not know or understand about why we would have this expectation?
I think that was beautifully stated. I would say, students are afraid of getting in trouble, perhaps. And so we have a lot of students living off campus and maybe not in particular situations where they know all of their roommates, right? We have communities amongst us that there are lots of folks living inside apartments or apartment complexes, but perhaps even in closer quarters. And so what resources or opportunities might your office provide, particularly when it comes to holding others around us accountable for wearing their mask as well, on and off campus?
I mean, the first thing is we've done a fair amount of coaching already and consulting with people who have a concern, but maybe aren't totally feeling confident or equipped to engage in a conversation with someone to say, hey, I really need you to wear your mask in this space, or the fact that you're standing so closely to me is really making me uncomfortable, right? So we've done a fair amount of coaching around that, and that's always an opportunity. But I think, we have opened up the UIO Cares reporting form, which you can find on the Dean of Students website, or you can just go to the search bar on the university webpage and search UIO Cares. And then we're using that as a platform for reporting student concerns, but also specifically reporting any concerning behavior as relates to the COVID policy. We know for some people, it doesn't feel accessible or possible for them to engage in that conversation. And so really our intention with UIO Cares is to then put it on the radar, right? We have certainly emphasized to faculty and staff that our intention to engage around conduct is more for those issues of non-compliance. When someone has refused to engage with the expectation or participate in the conversation as we clarify what we need in that moment, right? Step back a bit, or could you please put on your mask before you enter the space? So we are prepared to engage in a conduct proceeding when someone's willfully defying the COVID policy, but we are hopeful that we can help support engaging in conversations, whether that's directly between two peers or faculty to a student or faculty to an employee peer, and that if in cases where that can't happen, the Dean of Students Office would serve in that role, right? Like we want to help elevate the understanding about why these policies are absolutely necessary to create a really thriving and healthy community environment during this time. But I think it's important to say the same expectations for faculty and staff, right? And so the Dean of Students Office isn't engaging in that process, but there is a parallel process over in HR. So I don't ever want students to have the impression that we're putting this all on their shoulders and that's the only group that we're holding accountable. And it's going to take everyone following these expectations.
No, I think it's fair. And I think that is something that this isn't just about students' expectations, right? That we all have a role to play in creating the most healthy campus community in not only on campus, but off campus. So well said. And as always, such a pleasure to have you, and look forward to many more conversations with our students and other nightly shows that we might be able to highlight. And so with that, thank you, and we'll be back in touch.